All right, so let's get to it. Today we are talking about the political psychology of otherwise progressive and leftist people with some dumbass opinions on Russia's invasion of Ukraine. We're going to talk a little bit about the no-fly zone opinions, and we're going to talk a little bit about Republicans now being pro-Russia, which is funny if anyone is familiar with conservative stance on the Soviet Union during the Cold War, but we're mostly going to focus on progressives and leftists. Okay, so whenever I'm doing a video, I always try to hone in on what I'm doing by asking what is the goal? What is the purpose? What is the point of this video? So if you're new to the channel, which at a subscriber count on YouTube of about 350 means basically everyone. Anyway, if you're new, about half of my videos that aren't about politics are about autism, and the whole point of those videos is personal growth. So that's the angle that we're going to hit politics up from today, is political self-growth, because I very strongly believe that if you do not keep growing politically, that you risk becoming in the future one of those cringy Mayor Pete Buttigieg supporting boomers, the ones that would awkwardly flail their arms while singing that High High Hope song. Ugh. I'll save you the footage. Or worse, if you stagnate politically, if you stop growing, you do risk becoming a future Trump supporter. There are people that just a few years ago were progressive and are now full-on Trump QAnon. By the way, here's my risk to you all, okay? All right? If the chat gets too feisty, if I see tankies up in this chat, I will play footage of the High High Hope singing boomers. But I'm saving you the cringe for now. All right. Anyway, so this is obviously a big story, and I've wanted to talk about it for a while. But because I'm not an international relations expert, see, my political science education, it was based in American politics, comparative politics. I studied a lot of inequality-related issues and political psychology. So that political psychology is the angle we're coming at from today. And I figure that I should actually establish what these bad opinions are, because if you aren't someone who, spends all your day on Twitter and you actually go outside and touch grass, you might not have actually come across these cringe opinions. So they mostly fall along 4 lines, okay? First one is Russia's imperialist actions are in some way understandable. The most common one revolves around NATO expansion. Second one is hyper-focusing on the Ukrainian neo-Nazi Azov battalion, as if Ukraine is some uniquely anti-Semitic country in the region, and we'll debunk that ignorance. The third one is posturing as anti-imperialists while ignoring Russian imperialism. And then the fourth one is just dismissing wholly the mainstream narrative because, well, the media always lies on behalf of the military-industrial complex. And before we dive in, I want to establish something, and that is that I'm not entirely talking about this as an outsider. So I think one of the values of my autism videos is that I can talk about autism from the inside. I'm not like some doctor who's studied autism but doesn't have autism. If 2018 me didn't grow politically, I'd probably be one of those people with these garbage opinions that I just mentioned, particularly the NATO one. I feel like I really would have been vulnerable to that one. So if you're watching this and what I'm saying feels like I'm talking about you, I'm going to challenge you right now to try to not be defensive, because being defensive kills personal growth. All right? So let's dive in. Let's examine the underlying motivations for otherwise leftist people forming these wrong opinions about Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Oh, wait, actually, hold on. Okay, before we do that, everyone watching now, please like the stream. Everyone watching after the live stream, please like this video. Please subscribe. As a tiny creator, every little bit of engagement helps, and I will be reading comments as we go along. Keegan, I think that kind of torture is restricted as per the Geneva Convention. I'm guessing that's in reference to the Mayor Pete Boomer people. All right. Okay. First category of dumb opinions. I'm going to call these the I don't want to look like I'm part of X group, so I'm going to have the opposite opinion. All right. This is people, they don't want to look like those cringy corporate centrist Democrats. They don't want to look like those people who overly obsessed about Russian interference in the 2016 election. I know a couple years ago I was guilty of that one. These are people who don't want to come off like those idiot boomers who are still stuck in the Cold War mentality of Soviet Union bad. People don't want to look like those suckers who bought all the lies of the Iraq War. And I will admit, it's pretty easy to fall into these thoughts of like, hey, these groups that I just mentioned, they're wrong a lot. And when they're all on one side, it's a pretty good sign that that side is wrong. And then the reaction is, well, then I'm going to disagree. And I want to hit on the ego, right? The leftist ego, right? I feel like I got to ace the political psychology. And the only way I'm going to do that is by talking about the ego. So there's this ego that a lot of people on the left have. And again, trying to disarm your defensiveness. I know I'm guilty of it. And that ego wants to signal that, hey, I'm not like the normies, man. I see through the bias. I see through the lies. I see through the propaganda. And I see through the American exceptionalism. The underlying message being, look at me, aren't I so special? And part of the leftist ego is that we've grown beyond just believing everything that we're told, right? We see through the official narrative, which often does actually skew conservative. Now, I will also admit that a lot of that ego bullshit, it's kind of true. Like on most things, especially historically speaking, the left is typically on the right side of history. But everything I've mentioned thus far, do you see the problem? It's coming to conclusions not based off the actual evidence. It's coming to an opinion based off of appearances, right? Off of wanting to conform to the perceived preferences of your in-group, which in this case is like terminally online leftists. Because, remember, if you're trying to look like you're not part of an out-group, it's in service of signaling to your in-group that, hey, I'm one of you guys. One of you over the top, always on Twitter, people. All right, so I mentioned that I study political psychology. I find it fascinating. I read all sorts of academic papers on it, and so I got to bring it in here, where one of the things that's been found is that the need to conform is much stronger in the conservative brain, and forming opinions to fall in line with your in-group's perceived opinions is a conservative tendency. Now, the reason why I bring that up, and this is going to be a theme throughout the video, so pay attention to it, please, is that the underlying reason for a lot of these cringe opinions that otherwise progressive people are having is because of conservative thought patterns. And I think that this is dangerous because if you train your brain to think in these conservative ways, you will inevitably become more conservative over time. And unfortunately, and this is very prevalent in the online left, there's this tendency to want to be part of a niche subculture. Because remember, part of the leftist ego is like, we are different from the normies. And I think that impulse is damaging to our movement because it is inherently exclusionary, right? The goal of politics is to wield power to make the world a better place. Now, the right understands this. Well, not the making the world a better place part, but the right at least understands that, hey, we need solidarity to gain power. And the somewhat unfortunate reality is that the plurality of Americans are not leftists, they ain't progressives, they're moderate liberal types. So if you want to actually make life better, which I define as minimizing suffering and maximizing freedom, the way that we do that is to bring people over to our side. So we need to, as leftists, grow out of this exclusionary, Aren't we so special and smart for knowing what the normies don't know? That's a mindset we need to move on from. I know that I had a twinge of this mindset, right? It's like the desire to be special and smart relative to the normies. And the way that I grew out of this immature impulse was through activism, because when you're going door to door, your goal changes. Your goal becomes, I need to convince every single person that will listen that siding with the left is the best way to go, right? Wouldn't it be nice if the terminally online left would figure this out? It would really help our movement, you know? I want to emphasize, because I keep saying the terminally online left, I want to emphasize that the people that I'm talking about is a small subsection of the left. You know, if you actually go outside and you go talk with activists, this does not touch any of those people. I don't know. There's just something about the human connection, man. It really challenges you to grow. All right. Before we move on to the next section, I want to talk about another thought pattern that I know I have. I'd be curious to know if anyone else has this. I think it's an autism-related thing where I really struggle to isolate one idea. So here's what I mean by that, right? So a few years ago, if somebody came up to me and was like, hey, Putin sucks, Putin's a menace, I have this negative emotional reaction. And it's because I would take that correct statement and connect it to dumb opinions that somebody who thinks Putin sucks might also have. Emphasis on might. We get nowhere by being arrogant. 100% agree. So here's how I would tangent off, right? So like, okay, this person says Putin's terrible. Well, therefore, they must also think that the U.S. should be involved militarily in the region, and that's bad. I don't want that dumb idea. Think negatively of them. Or the person I'm talking to they just believe everything elites and media tell them. They're just parroting what they hear on TV. I don't like that. I don't want to look like I'm one of those suckers. And then another example would be, you know, oh, this person thinks Putin's bad, therefore they think that the U.S. is good, and I know the U.S. is damaging to humanity, blah, blah, blah. You see where I'm getting with this? And dick move on my part, man. I'd hear people's just objectively correct opinions and just assume that they also thought the adjacent dumb ones. It's an overly cynical attitude, man. It's not fair to other people. And I wonder how prevalent that is. Maybe that's just my autism brain. Anyway, my message here is, like, if somebody says something correct, don't try to overanalyze it. Don't try to, like, figure out, well, this means they could be wrong, and I'm gonna take all the implications. I don't know. Just validate their correctness. It'll make the left more likable in their mind too, so it serves a purpose, right? People don't always come to the correct conclusions for the right reasons. Just be happy that they came to the correct opinion. You know, one of the things that really bothered me seeing all of these tanky adjacent opinions, or full-blown tanky opinions, is the lack of nuance. You know, one of the things that studies that look into what's the difference between the conservative mind and the progressive mind is that conservatives have a harder time parsing out nuance, right? There's more black and white thinking. And it was so annoying to see progressive people having these black and white opinions. You know, you can trash Putin and still understand that the U.S. has problems. You can have a negative opinion of Russia without ceding the idea that Russian interference in the 2016 election was the 100% sole reason that Hillary Clinton lost to Trump. You can be against U.S. imperialism and oppose Russian imperialism in Ukraine, just like you can be against the war profiteering of the military-industrial complex and yet still support arming the Ukrainians. You can cheer on Ukraine while also being in favor of the fascist Azov battalion being on the front lines of Operation Human Nazi Shield. Nuance, people. It's part of what makes us leftists, right? Just don't lose sight of that. I really genuinely believe, you risk becoming a future shit libber, or even worse, a future conservative. I guess that's why it's harder to be on the left, right? Because like for conservatives, all they need to do is they just need to like recognize the big ego monkey and then just fall in line, right? They just need to fall in line with whoever is telling them to go fear the people that they fear. But to be a good lefty, man, you gotta think your shit through and do so with nuance. All right, so what I'm gonna do right now is before we go on to the next section, I want to ask. Is what I'm saying making sense? Is there anything you want me to clarify? Is there anything you think I missed? Just on this topic. I will get to other stuff, but there's like a communication difference with autism where I'm not sure all the time when I'm being clear or if what I said was coherent. So as a fellow autist, I kind of see that. Yeah, thank you, Tim Travis. Validating my experience. Everything is so connected, so I don't think it's necessarily good to look at each idea as if it's in a vacuum. Wraith's Bride, yeah, dude, 100%. It's very good to. That's like the intersectionality thing, right? I guess I want to thread the needle on like. Don't just assume negatively of people, but yes, and thinking in an intersectional way is good. Dan Wood, corollary, if somebody says something you disagree with, it's easy to jump to conclusions about what they mean. It's more interesting to ask a lot of questions and to understand and extract the nuance. That's a great point, Dan. Asking questions can be a very good way of communicating political ideas to people. It's less threatening, I find. Especially if, like, it's a bit manipulative, but if you ask questions, you can kind of guide them towards your thought process. I've done that before. Tim Travis, tankies. Western imperialism is the most dangerous entity in the history of our planet. That should be followed, Tim, that should be followed by ignores Chinese imperialism, ignores Russian imperialism, ignores the history of Soviet imperialism. Wraith's Bride, yeah, and then you can also make them introspect more and figure things out. Yeah, I assume that's in regards to what I just said about questioning things, asking questions of people. All right. One last thing before we move on. Okay, I want to talk about the advantage of live streaming because I feel it's odd. I feel less nervous because I feel like I'm talking with all of you. Instead of like trying to talk to a cold camera lens attached to my phone. So I hope that I'm able to capture what I'm better able to do in my autism videos, which is to be conversational, because I have a history of being very preachy when it comes to politics. All right, let's hit up the category number 2 of stupid ass opinions. Are you people ready? All right. It's seeing red flags. Seeing red flags based off of real world horrors, but then emotionally jumping to a conclusion. It's another one I'm going to talk from the inside, all right? I know I'm guilty of it. The familiar red flags people are seeing go along the lines of, the military-industrial complex is making money from selling weapons to Ukraine. Oh my God, corporate media, they're fawning over the Ukrainians, who the corporate media otherwise just completely ignores. And now the Ukrainians are like the biggest victims of all time under the boot of this hostile regime. And red flag number 3, the hostile regime is an old American rival. So the signs, man, they're all there. Oh my God, we're ramping up to war that we shouldn't be in an American presence. It will only cause more suffering. Turn off, be bad. No, don't want. Now, when I say the real world horrors, I'm mostly referring to the Iraq War. The Iraq War, I want to describe it as like a political trauma that people with a conscience have. So I want to make it really clear, okay? It is understandable why someone would look at what's happening and have an intensely negative reaction to the U.S. being involved in any other country. Any student of post-World War II American history should be concerned. Excuse me. Especially because there's always some geopolitical gain here for the United States, right? And especially because Russia is an historic rival of the US, it's just so easy to fall into the thought process of, this is some Cold War bullshit, seriously? Seriously? We haven't moved on from that. It's been like 30 years since the Soviet Union died, and seriously, we haven't moved on from the Cold War. And it's even more understandable because, you know, the subject of this video is an underlying theme of this video is political growth, and the Iraq War was like this major consciousness expanding, growing moment. How many millions of people, maybe you're one of them, grew out of that naive phase of political understanding where you think that America is an exceptional force for democratic good in the world? So I'm going to say understandable. There needs to be like a ticker on the screen right here. That's how many times does Keegan say understandable? But it really is. It's understandable that people would be scarred by the Iraq War and all the lies that led us into it. And it makes sense that some people would see so many parallels with what's happening in Ukraine. And it's understandable that would shut down their critical thinking about this particular situation. Because it is different in so many ways, right? Because this seeing red flags category, it's falling into another conservative psychological tendency, which is black and white thinking. I mentioned before that the conservative mind struggles with parsing out nuance. And so here's the thought process, right? So if the U.S. is involved in some sort of war, it's 100% bad all the time. Reject, ignore the evidence. We're probably being told lies. U.S. bad, don't get involved. And I think related to all this is conflating anti-American imperialism with anti-imperialism, right? We have to get into this. This is super important to the political psychology behind these bad takes, right? It's this overfixation on NATO. That's where this comes in, okay? I know personally, just a few years ago, I was one of those people excusing Putin because, oh, NATO's expanding and NATO is building up. There's troops on the border, blah, 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 right? And part of me was still stuck in hyper-fixating on America bad, which, hey, understanding America's harmful to the world, that's pretty based, all right? But it can lead to excusing other countries when they're being shitty. So while it's good, straight up great, to want America to do better, while it's smart and logical to focus on the country you actually live in because you have the most effect on it. And while it's based to get that America does a great deal of harm, if you take that too far and you overfixate on that, you will fall into the idea that America is the root of all evil. That mindset, it just strips away any nuance about the positive aspects of America, and, as is the case with here, it makes people excuse the horrible actions of other countries. Because if you're overfixated on America's role in the world, you're not going to spend too much time thinking about where Russia's coming from on this. So the message here, I really want people to take this home, right? Being on the left is more than just shitting on America. That's a necessary component, but being on the left ultimately comes down to wanting to minimize suffering and maximize freedom. All countries do harm. Ironically, the people who are flailing, U.S. imperialism is what forced Putin's hand, they're ironically buying into the idea that America is exceptional, just in the negative direction, which takes agency away from other countries, other governments, other leaders of other governments, which is kind of dehumanizing, right? Like what, the Russian government can't think for itself? Odd way of thinking for somebody on the left. It's just not living in the real world. Tim Travis, tankies, the Iraq War was so awful. Never again. Also tankies, just do the Nazi stuff. Watching anti-imperialist, terminally online leftists gives leeway to Russia or flat out back them is flat out insanity. Well, I hope that this video is making it clear that I agree with that. So let's talk about another conservative psychological tendency. I was reading this really interesting study. I'm going to do some research streams on political psychology. I think it's just too fascinating not to. Anyway, one of the papers I was reading, it showed through 4 separate tests that conservatives are mentally lazier. I think the term was, what was it? They were cognitively lazy. I think that was the term. Anyway, if you've ever talked with a conservative, I'm sure you have anecdotal evidence to back that up. But let's actually think through the idea that Putin only invaded Ukraine because NATO forced him to. Okay. All right. So here's what you have to buy. You have to buy that Putin thinks Ukraine democratically choosing to join NATO will lead to specifically a ground invasion of Russia, that the paranoia of politicians is a valid justification for invasion, and that Russia is entitled to a sphere of influence. All right. Okay, so let's really think this through, okay? Let's spend like 2 brain cells thinking this through. Could Putin really be so dumb and so delusional as to actually think that NATO will unprompted ground invade Russia? You know what? Here's you know what we're gonna do? We're gonna look at a map. All right, this is a map of Europe. Now Europe is a designation on the human planet Earth. Okay, this country is called Poland. Poland is a member of NATO, and Poland is pretty fucking close to Russia here. So I ask you this, okay? By the way, I hope that this is in frame. Oops. All right. Now you tell me this, all right? In a world of intercontinental ballistic missiles, what weapons can be launched from Ukraine but not Poland? Yeah. Okay, so ground invasion. Yeah. All right. God, just like the idea that people would think, well, this is threatening to Russia because of they're on the border, it'll be a ground invasion, like a ground invasion of Russia. Do you remember Napoleon? That went well, didn't it? Do you remember Hitler? Yeah. Fucking ground invasion of Russia. Jesus Christ. God, if it like let's okay, we're gonna do. I'm gonna let you in on a little secret. All right, we're gonna game theory this out. This is some like upper level grad school political science student tier shit right here. Okay, we're gonna game theory this out. Okay, let's say that Ukraine democratically chooses to join NATO, and then like a tank with like a NATO flag on it goes from Ukraine and into Russia. Okay. So let's think this through. What's going to happen? I would think that Russia would just nuke the incoming forces, or straight up just skip that and just nuke the NATO countries. So then a ground invasion is of no threat. I don't know. It just the idea that Ukraine joining NATO is a physical threat. It's just so crazy to me. Ground invading a nuclear armed country. Just, do I have to explain? It's just so dumb. I can't even, man. I think all of you are aware that the only true threat that Ukraine joining NATO poses to Russia is the threat to Russia's desire to dominate the region. Because come on, man, no one's sane believes that NATO's going to ground invade nuclear-armed Russia. Right? It's just a threat to Russia's sphere of influence. And so here's the question I present to you. Why should Russia... Ooh, I just hit the mic there. I'm very professional. Why should Russia be the regional hegemon? Like, why is it entitled to that? Because the Soviet Union collapsed 30 years ago, before I was born. So when that happened, Ukraine decided to break away. And Ukrainians right now, and for the past several years, have wanted to be more Western aligned. So why should they be subjugated to a right-wing authoritarian regime? I keep seeing like, well, there was a verbal promise made to the Soviet Union, a country that doesn't exist 30 years ago, that NATO wouldn't expand to Russia's. Maybe it's me, but why should a country of 40 plus million people just be sacrificed as a buffer state? I've actually heard people argue this. People who otherwise have progressive opinions. I don't know. It's just weird to me to see these otherwise leftist people basically treat Ukraine like, oh, it's just part of Russia anyway, right? It's weirdly U.S. centric. It's weirdly dehumanizing, and it's almost racist. I want to call it racist adjacent, to just lump all of the former Soviet bloc countries into just being one thing. Also, isn't it pretty damn conservative to think of the world as being like U.S. versus USSR? The world isn't static. Like, it's always changing. It's just an ironically conservative tendency. Tim Travis, because big country good, bigger country makes more good. Taps head. It's the this meme. Yeah. You know what's ironic is Putin also hasn't been able to like update his political thinking, right? He can't seem to emotionally move on from the reality that the Soviet Empire collapsed. I think that's a huge motivation. You want to talk about NATO all day, but let's get real. Putin has a chip on his shoulder. He wants to resurrect the Soviet Union, and he wants. Here's what I imagine, right? Okay, so here's Putin's like desire is like he has a future fantasy of like kids in Russian schools, like opening up their textbook, and there's like a map of Russia, okay, and there's a lot of red to say this is Russia's territory, and then there's like another, and it says before Putin, and then under that it says after Putin, and there's just more Russia. Like, it's that simplistic, it's that archaic. I don't respect these right-wing authoritarians. You could probably tell. I want to talk also about the assumption of the NATO argument is that Russian paranoia is like somehow a justification, like, oh, they feel threatened, therefore it's okay for them to invade a sovereign country and do 19th century level imperialism. So I'll ask you, if you're one of those people, I'll ask you this. Remember when the U.S. fearmongered about Saddam Hussein having weapons of mass destruction? I want you to picture in your mind what the political leanings of someone who was cool with the U.S. invading Iraq on those grounds. I want you to think, like, what were their political leanings? And now I want you to consider that if you're someone flailing about how NATO caused this, you really are the equivalent of those Iraq war supporters. Ugh. It's a picture of him on his horse. Oh my God, yes, the Putin, like the shirtless man boob action. Oh God, that's such a cringe photo. Isn't it amazing how these like right wing autocrats they don't see their egomania? It's like they're so absorbed in their own narcissism. Freedom. Hey, Tim Travis points out something good. Freedom-loving libertarian Rand Paul, I saw this, is also basically okay with Ukraine being a part of Russia because it was part of the Soviet Union. Yep. A lot of libertarians have just as authoritarian of a mindset as the American conservatives. They just think that corporations should be our authoritarians. All right. I want to point out. I actually think Russian imperialism here is worse than the typical U.S. imperialism. Putin said that Ukraine is part of Russia, as that comment just alluded to, that they're actually one people for historical and ethnic reasons. Man, it really sucks. I saw Kyle Kalinske latch onto this idea. I really like Kyle. I've liked his show for a while now, and I remember before Ukraine was invaded, he was saying, well, Ukraine's always been part of Russia, and the eastern half mostly speaks Russian, and there are millions of ethnically Russian people in Ukraine, and that's like, it's like the justification. It's It's like grasping at a justification because I just don't want the U.S. to be involved. It's just grabbing anything. Anyway, we'll tangent on that. Here's a thought, okay? If you're using ethno-nationalism as a justification for invading a sovereign country, I'm going to deduct one leftist point from you. You know what? Probably a lot more. You get more than one leftist point deducted. It can't just be me, right? Like there's people watching this, right? It can't just be me. That if you're playing defense for a right-wing authoritarian, hyper-capitalist, ethno-nationalist minded imperialist state, to me that isn't actually on the path to a better, more leftist world. Maybe it's just me. Remember the ethno-nationalist justification? That's a great one historically. Remember when Hitler literally used that in the "we must unite the Germanic people" as justifications for invading, Czechoslovakia? Remember that? That's great. You would definitely want to be on the same side as that. So I suppose the lesson here is, if your conclusion relies on that shitty of a justification, your conclusion probably sucks ass too. Right? In comparing this to U.S. imperialism, I personally think that the fascist way of thinking is more dangerous than the typical U.S. corporatist neoliberal resource control justification for imperialism, which is really saying a lot. One of the bits of nuance that I see people with these garbage opinions rejecting is like, if you call out Russian imperialism, you're therefore saying that U.S. imperialism is somehow more acceptable. You can be against both, and you can think one is worse. Actually, you know what? I think there's a bigger reason why Russian imperialism here is worse than U.S. imperialism. An even better one than the ethno-nationalism thing is that Russia has threatened nuclear war if any country directly comes to Ukraine's defense. So Putin is threatening the end of the fucking world because he wants to resurrect the Soviet Empire, because he wants his penis insecurity to be expanded. I just don't understand any leftists seeing that and not instantly turning against any excuse Russia has thrown out there. How does that not just disarm any defensiveness of Russia that you have? How does they're going to nuke the world possibly? I don't know. It makes me suspicious that these people are actually on the left. All right. End of section 2. I will ask chat. I will ask again. Is there anything I missed? Anything you want me to clarify? Any opinion that you had 5 minutes ago that I did not read because I'm focused on what I'm trying to say? Go ahead and throw it in chat. Right, Sprite, everyone's equal, but some people are more equal than others. Yes. That's the tanky mindset all the way. My favorite is Ethan C. My favorite is when Putin goes snorkeling and finds ancient relics just in time for a photo op. Dude, doesn't it remind you of the Kim Jong-un propaganda? Like Kim Jong-un does not have an asshole and he never poops. It's just so crazy. Reckless creature. Male ego can be very fragile. Yes, they need to prove oneself. I want to do a research stream talking about why people become more conservative as they get older, and I think there's some male ego stuff involving that. Oh, thank you, Peppermint Tea. I love you. All right, are we ready to move on? I know there's a delay. I don't know how long to stall, just based off the delay. I'm kind of cool stalling though. It's not like I can't edit this out later, you know. One of the joys of live streaming. And yet it will require less editing time than doing my video essays. All right, I'm just going to move on. Another huge source of these dumbass, basically conservative and right-wing opinions is ignorance. I really hope, to anyone that's watching this, I do not have to explain to you why ignorance is such a huge... Let me start that over. Let's start that over, shall we? All right. Is everything all right? Yeah? All right. Cool. Thank you. Tim Travis, what tankies and many leftists don't understand is that the enemy of my enemy should only be our friend if it reduces harm or leads to good outcomes. 1,000,000% agree. All right. Okay. Let's talk about ignorance, because ignorance is a huge source of these dumbass opinions. I hope that I don't have to explain to you that ignorance is a huge source of conservative opinions, right? I mean, like, have you ever talked with a conservative? The ignorance in this case revolves around anti-Semitism in Eastern Europe. I've seen people compare arming the neo-Nazi Azov battalion with Reagan arming bin Laden. The problem with this comparison, as understandable as it is to make, is that bin Laden and the Mujahideen, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, that was part of a broader right-wing reactionary religious fundamentalist movement in the region, and that just isn't the case with fascism in Ukraine. You know that the Ukrainian president, you know, that Zelensky guy, you've probably seen him on TV somewhere. Yeah, he's Jewish. And clearly the fascists are pretty damn incompetent, because the Jewish dude, he won over 70% of the country's vote. Can you imagine a U.S. president getting 70% of the vote? Spoilers, it's actually never happened. The way that Ukraine's parliament works is it's proportional representation, and I'm going to not go on the tangent about how that's a better electoral system than the one that we have. I'm going to avoid that. The way that you get seats in the Ukrainian parliament is that voters vote for a party, and if that party gets 5% of the vote, they get seats in the parliament. The neo-Nazis failed to even get that 5%. By the way, speaking of that 5%, let's look at this Pew Research thing. I want to show you this. Hello, map. All right, this is from Pew Research, okay? This is the percentage of adults who say they would not be willing to accept Jews as citizens of their country. Pretty decent measure of anti-Semitism, I think. And what do we notice? Let's see. So basically every country bordering Ukraine, actually every single country bordering Ukraine, every single one of them is in double digits. Look, Romania, 22%. 22% of Romanians would not be willing to accept Jews as citizens of their country. And as I'm sure you noticed, look at this. Look at this. Ukraine, 5%. Russia, 14%. What this tells me is that if you are worried about anti-Semitism, and if you're worried about fascism, which I think every human should be, you're looking in the wrong place if you're focusing on Ukraine. All right, back to full screen. I mean, the irony of like fixating on Ukrainian neo-Nazis is like Russia's literally ruled by a right-wing authoritarian and personalist regime, right? Putin is connected with tons and tons of fascist groups, and for fuck's sake, he used a blood and soil excuse to justify invading Ukraine. That is more fascistic than any tiny powerless group in Ukraine. I don't know. I want to do a little thought exercise, okay? Because, like, again, I understand the concern about arming neo-Nazis, but let's think about this, right? So if Canada invaded the United States to establish the Great Canadian Empire, who do you think would be fighting the invaders from the north? I guarantee you it would be a lot of those right-wing, hyper-nationalist, white supremacist militia weirdos. That's just an unfortunate reality, man. Those would be the people on the front lines, in addition to the people who actually, care about the freedom to have our terrible healthcare system. So, I gotta tell you, man, if like Canada invaded, I would support those militia crazies dying on the front line to protect American autonomy. I think that's a positive lefty take. I don't know. I can't help but think that the people who are reeing about the Azov battalion, They basically what happened is they started with the conclusion, I don't want the U.S. involved, and they worked backwards, trying to grab anything resembling evidence to justify their conclusion. In fact, a lot of what we've been talking about, the ethno-nationalist justification that somehow some small percentage, admittedly, of otherwise progressive people have latched onto. It's working backwards from a conclusion, and that's just a terrible way of coming to political conclusions and political positions in general. You know what it reminds me of? It actually reminds me of the anti-vax people, right? Because they see big pharma making enormous profits. They fear how quickly the vaccine was churned out, and let's get real, they probably also have a fear of needles. And they glob onto that to justify their already preconceived anti-vax opinion. And so here's where the nuance comes in, is that just because the drug companies are evil profiteers, that doesn't mean that nothing that they make is effective and that we should discount the vaccine, as all the science shows. I'm seeing people in chat are pretty astonished by Romania. Yeah, it was pretty shocking, isn't it? Tim Travis, oh no, Mounties armed with javelin missiles. They're armed with Mitchells. They get every Mitchell in Canada, and they're armed with them. Okay, I'm dyslexic. Give me some slack. Yeah, the javelin missile armed Mounties. That sounds pretty cool. Amanda Perez, cognitive dissonance in a way, not wanting U.S. involved and needing to rationalize it in a way to make themselves feel better about their take. That 100%. I wish I'd come to that. That's such a smart observation. Yes. That so much of politics, particularly with dumb opinions, is people trying to not feel shitty about themselves. Very, very common with conservatives who have this moral inferiority complex because ultimately their ideology revolves around selfishness. All right, we're not going to go off that tangent. No, we're going to go on another tangent, okay? Because do you remember in my autism video where I talked about the tangential conversation thing, right? And if not, you better subscribe right now, man. You better subscribe. You better click on that video when we're done with this one. Seriously though, please like and subscribe, please. Every like, every subscription, every bit of engagement, every comment, every one of them helps. All right, okay. All right, tangent time, right? So, this video being about the political psychology of cringe opinions regarding Russia's invasion of Ukraine, I've focused entirely on leftist, socialist, progressives having, in this case, a right-wing opinion. But let's hit up the libs. Let's hit up the libs occupying the moderate zone, because we need to talk about the no-fly zone thing. All right. This is a challenging one for me because what I need to do is I need to frame this in a constructive, non-threatening way, so that people will hear what I'm saying and want to grow from it. All right, so because that's the goal of this video, right? The goal of this video is personal growth on a political level. So I need to harness the energy and the training of my broadcast journalism degree to communicate in the most effective way. All right. Deep breaths. Okay. If you're one of those people calling for a no-fly zone in Ukraine, you're fucking nuts! What? Have you thought for 2 seconds about what that would mean? Oh my god. Am I an alien? Am I the only one thinking shit through? I get that my autism brain overanalyzes the fuck out of everything, but seriously, people, oh my god. Okay, let's game theory this out, okay? Okay, let's imagine a Russian plane flies over Ukrainian airspace, right? Okay, a NATO country. Let's just say the US, okay? Shoots down the Russian plane. Right? That is an unambiguous, undeniable act of war against a nuclear-armed country. Jesus fucking Christ. But actually, you know what? I'm curious about this. How many people actually want the no-fly zone? Chat, I have not looked this up. Predictions. What are your predictions? What percentage of Americans want a no-fly zone enforced. What percentage of Americans want nuclear war? I want numbers. I want numbers. Hold on. Here we go. Looking it up. Okay. Poll. Americans want no-fly zone. Ukraine. Here. Oh, hold on. I need to share my screen. All right. Poll. 46%. Okay, we're seeing 46% here. UMass.lol.edu. This is from, okay, so this is from 24th of March. So that's a month ago. Okay, 46% favor. Okay, all right, 46%. Dude, honestly, I was predicting 70%. Oh, damn it. There it is, 74%. No. Oh, this is March 4th. Okay. All right, this is March 4th. So maybe it went from like 74% and then people started thinking about it and it went to below. God, some 74% of Americans. Thank you, advertisements. Some 74% of Americans. Oh my God. 74%. What? Oh God. Economist YouGov poll 45%. All right. What does YouGov say? I'm sorry, I'm super fascinated by this all of a sudden. I do not accept your cookies. Go away. When was this done? Do you have a date on this? Sample size March 7th through the 9th. Okay. Wow, this is some seriously fluctuating numbers. All right. Oh, man. Okay. That was both as bad and slightly better than I expected. Reckless Creature, you guess 62%? Amanda 60%. Tim Travis, you're memeing right now, Tim. You're memeing. 48%, yeah. Everyone's pretty close. Oh my God. Can I share with you like a really cynical thought? I can't help but think that like the boomers that want this, that they're just like, fuck it. I made it to age 60. It's worth the risk. I have to imagine that a lot of these people who want the no-fly zone, they lived through the Cold War, so I'd think they'd be like in the know, they'd be like one of the people who was up in the knowledge about how Russia has nuclear weapons and would see an attack as a reason to launch the nuclear weapons. You know what? That's confirmed. I've actually seen, again, this is Twitter things, so grain of salt, but I've actually seen people say it's worth the risk of nuclear war. Oh my God. What the fuck? It's like, are these boomers like, is their Viagra not working and they like want to feel strong? Like, what is happening? Oh. I can't help but go to the cynicism of like, yeah, I've made it this long in life. So why not make the risk? I mean, hey, listen. That is the default boomer position on the climate crisis. All right. God. Okay. All right. Okay. We need Keegan needs to mellow out for a sec. Let's stay focused. The point of this video is the political psychology motivating these bad takes. Okay. So why do people want the no-fly zone? One of the things I've noticed about people who are occupying the liberal centrist territory is that they really like bullies to be bullied. They really like the comeuppance, But you gotta think, right? So A leads to B leads to C. And listen, as a millennial, I've heard boomers harp on the whole, like, your consequences have actions, So to those people, I say, well, if you want a no-fly zone, side effects may include nuclear war. Can I just ask, just please don't let your reptile brain overwhelm your ability to rationally think, please, just please. I think you know what I mean by that, by the reptile brain, right? Tim Travis, this just in, average Americans aren't great at foreign policy. There was a comment earlier saying that there needed to be more international relations in schools, so those comments are connected. I might have been memeing, but I still want... that's accurate. This 69% was actually the most accurate call. Oh my god, this comment. Okay, Ethan, I think they literally think it's a button. The no-fly zone is a button that we can push that stops planes from flying there. Oh my god. Oh, another good point. Ooh, I can't believe I didn't think of this one. Tim Travis, great point. There's a lot of evangelicals that want the end times. Yes, because nuclear weapons would fall into the world being on fire and exploding in what is it? Generations, Revelations. I'm not a Bible expert. Okay. Oh my god. Okay. Oh, fun question for everyone. Okay. Is anyone surprised with how many conservatives, how many right wingers are now like Russia defenders? They're now Russia stands. Like these people just a few decades ago were the staunchest anti-Soviet Union people. I'm really curious. Is anyone surprised by that? Chat, tell me. Is anyone surprised? I want everyone watching right now. You tell me. Are you surprised by how many conservatives are coming to Russia's defense here? Not moving on until I get answers. I'm not surprised, by the way. Spoilers. I've read way too much about the authoritarian and conservative psychology to be surprised. Nah, they love Putin because Putin is friends with Trump. True. Yeah, so there's so that line of thinking is like, okay, our dear leader that we love is liked by another person, therefore they're part of our in group. Totally reasonable form of thinking. Honestly, I was at first. Yep. Yeah, at first, that's an important qualifier, right? So here's the thing. One thing I've noticed, it surprised the hell out of me in 2016. Not too surprising in 2020. Yep. Last few years have been a lot of political growth. I'm never surprised about anything that conservatives do or think. When Trump started kissing in a tree with Putin, they all fell in line. Can't disagree, Dan. Reckless creature, considering they don't have a thought of their own, I'm not surprised. Have you people also been reading the political psychology that I've been reading? Shit. Maybe I need to bring all of you on. Okay, one thing I've noticed about the right-wing authoritarian personality is that right-wing authoritarians don't like other right-wing authoritarians who take on a different aesthetic, who have a different facade. Right? So Christian fundamentalists don't like Muslim fundamentalists. Now, on theme for the channel, if you take an alien perspective, they're basically the same thing. They have basically the same psychology, basically the same ideology, but they have a slightly different aesthetic. So they hate each other. And it's the same deal with American conservatives hating the Soviet Union, right? So as soon as the Soviet Union stopped pretending to be left-wing, stopped pretending to be socialist, American right-wingers, they like in their simple black and white thinking brains were able to recognize their fellow authoritarians, which actually is a perfect segue to talk right back about the leftists, because we need to talk about how socialists need to stop defending the Soviet Union. Now, I understand that society had some serious accomplishments. I get that. Here was my talking point, by the way. Here was my big brain nuanced opinion, right? In 40 years, Soviet Union went from a backward feudal society that was really underdeveloped to putting the first human-made object into space. And whatever else, they have whatever else accomplished. I don't care. Okay, now, if you want to talk about how the Soviet Empire was not actually 100% bad, actually it was 90% bad and 10% good. If you want to have that conversation in like your little lefty niche circles and feel all like nuanced and special and smart, you do that. You do that, right? But please stop saying anything positive about the USSR to normies. Just stop. If you're a socialist, like, I really hope your goal is to put lefties in power, because the point of leftism is to make people's lives better. And that actually is going to require getting normie liberals and moderates over to the left. Normies are not going to be convinced by your nuanced take on how actually the Soviet Union had some great accomplishments we can learn from. Here, read this political theory book. That's like this big. That's been a strategy of a subsection of leftists for decades now, and it's never worked, man. In one election cycle, in 2016, Bernie Sanders did 1,000,000 times more to bring people over to the left, and he did that by appealing to people's material needs. I say 1,000,000 times more. That might even be an understatement. Big picture, man. If you're playing like defense for a totalitarian regime, if you're excusing the horrible atrocities, people are gonna question like, all right, so this person was that wrong on the Soviet Union. Are they wrong about climate change? Are they wrong about healthcare? Because being very wrong about one thing makes your good opinions more easily dismissible, and I just don't want people to give the normies more ammunition to dismiss socialism. And this, by the way, I want to harp on this. I know that I talked about this in the Political Compass video. Watch the video, like, subscribe. But the Soviet Empire was not even socialist, right? Lenin and company, they recognize the great moral force that the socialist ideology had at that time in place. And they adopted that language, that facade. They put some red paint on them in order to grab power. But it's not like the workers actually owned the means of production. By the way, any like Republican like boomer person that's like, oh, the Soviet Union, and they think like that just destroys your argument. Ask them, wait, did workers own the means of production in Russia? All the Soviet Union ever did was replace the CEO and the corporation with the party official in the state. And that's just as totalitarian as the worst that capitalism has to offer. There's no democracy in the workplace. I don't know. Like, if you want some good social democratic programs, universal healthcare, I know the Soviet Union had universal healthcare, not that... Ironically, America's healthcare was better, just because of resources. But my point is that if you want to look at, like, some good social democratic government programs that are successful, look at France. Look at Scandinavia. You know, places with a better standard of living than the U.S. Ugh. By the way, the method of right-wing authoritarians feigning support for leftist economic policy to gain power, that was the strategy that Trump used. Remember at the end of the election where there were those ads about how Trump was against the bankers and all that? How he was against Wall Street and Hillary's bought off? It was the same strategy Hitler used to. So that's bad. That's my commentary. It's bad. I don't know. The Soviet Union was just a right-wing, more than authoritarian, man. They were a totalitarian regime. They just had some socialist paint on them. It's like how Star Wars. Star Wars is a fantasy series with some space paint on it. And it's not a surprise at all that many of the party leaders who dominated Russia, the Soviet Union, they instantly became the billionaire capitalist oligarchs as soon as the Soviet Empire collapsed. It's not surprising. It's the same kind of people. Can I hot take right now? The U.S. and particularly Western and Northern Europe were more socialist than the USSR. I'll die on that hill. All right, we're getting close to the end here. I've been talking for 4 hours. That's probably good. Actually, I'm going to read some comments. Oh my God, there's a lot, relatively speaking. Ethan, yes, they went straight from Russia equals commies to libs hate Russia, so we love Russia. Yes. Another conservative impulse is to they like this, well I'm gonna dislike that, or the other way around, and you see that was a mistake that many progressives have made about this situation in particular. Dan Wood, I don't want to vilify ordinary people with right-wing beliefs. They're just brainwashed, not unlike corporate Democrats. I'd rather vilify the right-wing leaders and oligarchs. Yeah, one of the things I want to do is basically talk about why right-wing opinions are formed, because I think the right-wing way of thinking is bad. So I want to attack the ideas and the thought process and the psychology with the hopes that people will grow. So let's that actually tangents right into what I was about to say. Excellent. All right, so can I tell you about a fantasy land right here? So my hope is that some of the people who are watching this, evidently not the people who are live watching this, but people in the future when I post this video up on YouTube, my hope is that this does actually reach some of the people who are guilty of these bad thought patterns. And here to those people, right? I want to give you an off ramp, right? I want to provide some positive lefty takes that will set you apart from the shit libs, so that we can all feel special. All right, the anti-war protesters in Russia, right now, they're fucking heroes. These are people that are risking going to prison for years in Russia. Ugh. Or worse, they're at risk of police violence or being poisoned. They like poisoning in Russia, don't they? Uh-oh, we have people reeing in chat. Uh-oh. Another good lefty talking point. Ukrainians aren't the only victims of Putin, right? The Russian people are the ones facing the repercussions of these economic sanctions, and I know that the people playing defense for Russia understand this, because they talk about, oh, well, we can't do sanctions because that'll wind up hurting the people and not Putin himself as much. And so talk about how, this is Putin's fault. Like, Putin knew going in that there would be economic ramifications that would hurt the people of Russia, and he did it anyway, because he's a narcissistic right-wing autocrat. And he also was hurting the people of Belarus and Kazakhstan, any of Russia's like vassal states. He's hurting those people too. And the positive lefty take, I'm disappointed I haven't seen this. I have not seen this nearly enough. Russia keeps threatening nuclear war, so I think that what we should do is talk about how it's time to get rid of these horrible, potentially civilization-destroying weapons, because maybe it's just me, but I don't think any government, particularly an autocratic one, particularly a right-wing one, particularly one that uses ethno-nationalist justifications, I don't think any government should have the power to end the fucking world. Chad, are there any other positive lefty takes that you can think of? I think I had another one. Oh my god. And I forgot to put it in my notes because I'm so professional. Oh, yes. Positive lefty take. Hey, liberal that we want to bring over to the left. We should not only sanction Russia economically, we should completely sanction their oil. We should cut off Russian oil completely, and we should use that as a means to jumpstart the green energy revolution, right? Huh? That way you change the conversation into something that's like the most important issue of all time. The Soviets had to lock their citizens in. It can't be a good place to be. Yeah, this is in reference to the, oh. All right, we're getting toward the end, people. How are we gonna end this? What message can we take home from this? All right, I want to talk to anyone whom this video is describing. Right, because if this video it's hitting you, right, I want you to know that it's okay. The people in chat right now, they're one of the themes of the past several comments is we don't want to demonize normal people, right? We want to demonize the leaders, we want to demonize the ideas, and I don't know, man. I just want you to know that, like, it's okay to have a bad opinion. Like, we've all had them, right? Every one of us have that conservative, we have that right-wing authoritarian in us, because human beings have yet grown out of that like primitive reptile fear brain. And so give yourself permission to have messed up. Give yourself permission to have been wrong. And give yourself permission to move on and grow. All right. I think I'm going to end it there. If you made it this far, 4 hours into this video, please like and subscribe. Please tell me your comments below. I do read all of the comments because, yeah, be nice. Yeah, like and subscribe, man. Help a tiny creator out.